It's your league to dominate in EA Sports Madden NFL 27. Powered by the all-new Persona engine, you can build your franchise the way you want. And to really live your entire football journey, get the MVP Bundle. It comes with access to College Football 27, Madden NFL 27, plus Deluxe Edition rewards in both games. From campus legend to NFL superstar, make your rise with the MVP Bundle. Learn more at EA.com. Rated E for everyone with mild lyrics, user interact, and in-game purchases includes random items.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Warning. This show contains material that some listeners may find troubling, including discussions of intense horror movie themes, explicit language, movie spoilers, and women speaking. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, horror fans. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Eleanor.
And welcome to Horror Sandbox, the podcast where we dig around in horror films and see what we can unearth.
That's right. But before we get started today, Charlie, how are you coping with the horrors?
So I'm just having so much fun with this podcast. That's how I'm coping. It's just so cool because we've been finding and meeting new people that we never would have talked to before and, listening to new podcasts and watching new movies and all of this because of this podcast. And most recently, we had someone reach out to us named Rob, and him and his wife, Britta, record a podcast. And the podcast is about various aspects of audio storytelling, they call it. The podcast is called Phonograph, and I listened to it the other day while I was shopping in Costco. I had it on. And,
That is the best Costco experience. Like by yourself, earbuds in, podcast going or something, and just in the zone.
yeah, it was amazing. I never get to go there without my kids, and I did yesterday, and I was just like, oh, I could do this forever. And part of the reason I could have done it forever was because I was listening to this most recent podcast episode, and it was so relatable. So they interview someone named Julia Barton, and she goes over the story of how she used to work in radio, and it was so stressful to her. Like she was having stress dreams about meeting deadlines and stuff, and she just had a baby and was like working, and the baby started walking, and her husband kept saying like, the baby keeps looking for you. And so like she was heartbroken, and she hated her job, and it was really reliable. But then all of a sudden, the program she was on got canceled, and she was like, oh, thank God. And so she just stopped working. And what she ended up doing was every night she would do the dishes. And while she was doing the dishes, she would record a podcast episode while she's doing the dishes and just like uploaded it, like without like much editing or anything. It was just like a free form like thought. It's really interesting if you go listen to it. But I was just like, gosh, this is exactly like what I did. I was like, I'll give this podcast thing a shot. Like it'll build my portfolio, it'll give me something I was doing in my gap. And like, turns out I love it. So yeah, it was just really relatable. I really enjoyed it. So
I think it's super interesting to do a podcast about audio storytelling. I think it feels a little bit meta, but in a good way.
yeah, it was really interesting. So they talk about audiobooks, podcasts, like all the different forms of it and what defines each form and why podcasts don't get paid, but audiobooks do and stuff like that. It was a good discussion. I really liked it. So go check it out. And so how have you been coping with the horrors?
Well, I finally saw the movie Project Hail Mary, and it is incredible. All of the hype, you should believe it. It's very good. My husband saw it when it came out in theaters, but I didn't. And when it was streaming, he's like, do you want to watch this? I'm like, sure. And I don't know, at a certain point in the movie, I just looked at him and I was like, this stupid fucking alien puppet is going to make me cry, isn't it? And he's like, yep, but it is a perfect movie. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful story of male friendship and outer space and, the enduring hope of humanity. and it's just really good. Ryan Gosling is amazing. I really like everything I've ever seen him in, and he is perfect in this movie. It's funny, it gets you in the feels, and the ending is perfect. I love everything about it, and everyone who hypes it up is correct.
So I know this is bad because I do a movie podcast, but I really don't pay attention to the movies that have come out. What's it even about? I don't even know.
Without spoiling anything, I think the best way to explain it is planet Earth figures out that the sun is dying, and they've only got
gosh, that's like one of my worst fears. Okay. Okay.
and they figure out that there's a other star. It's basically like a virus or something is killing stars, and one of those stars is our own sun. So they figure out there's one that is apparently immune. So they need to send people into outer space to figure out why and send that information back to Earth so that perhaps the planet can survive. But it's so far away that basically the people who are going to go out there are probably never coming back. They might be able to send back the information and the science, but they're not going to return. So it's about that.
That's super interesting. I bet I could get my significant other to watch that with me tonight.
Oh, yes. I think he would love it. It's sci-fi, and it does go into like a bunch of I don't know. Do you do that thing when you're reading like a fantasy book and there's like a lot of complicated magic or something in it, and your eyes just kind of glaze over for those parts, but you're just like, yeah, the magic widget is widgeting and they need to unwidget it or something. Project Hail Mary has a bunch of like the science jargon in it, but it's easy to follow along even if you're not like, oh, a periodic table of elements wouldn't blah, 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 whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yes, which is perfect for me because
Yeah,
I'm not going to call it on its, I don't know, factual ability. So,
yeah. So
That's
I guess
funny.
all that to say, the science element of the science fiction element isn't too heavy. I know that can turn people off of a movie like this, but it's a perfect movie. I loved it. And I like sci-fi, but I don't usually like reach for that movie first. I mean, obviously I'm obsessed with horror movies, so that's what I go for. So to enjoy this one so much was kind of a surprise.
That's awesome. I'll definitely check it out.
Okay, Charlie. So what are we digging into today?
Today, we are digging into the 1977 movie Suspiria. And the IMDb movie summary for this is: an American newcomer to a prestigious German ballet academy comes to realize that the school is a front for something sinister amid a series of grisly murders. The writers are Dario Argento, Daria Nicolodi, and it's directed by Dario Argento. And the stars are Jessica Harper, Stefania Cassini, and Flavio Bucci. And we can't dig around in a horror sandbox without our trusty rusty tools. So, Eleanor, what is your Bloody Shovel Award?
There are so many good options in this, but the one that I couldn't get out of my brain, I finally went with, and that is Best Weird Little 1970s Victorian Boy.
That's perfect. He is so weird. I'm excited to talk about him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his now, but yeah, he's weird.
Mine is favorite chase scene, and I can't wait. I could talk about that one specific scene when we get there for an entire day. It's so fantastic.
And you have a few to choose from in this movie, so that's a good choice too.
Yes, it is. The movie starts with opening credits, and it's just plain black and white letters with this like beautifully haunting song playing in the background. And then at the end of it, we get a voiceover that says, Susie Bannion decided to perfect her ballet studies in the most famous school of dance in Europe. She chose a celebrated Academy of Freiburg. One day at 9 a.m, she left Kennedy Airport, New York, and arrived in Germany at 10:40 p.m. local time. The movie then starts with who we can assume is Susie Bannion walking through a German airport, and she steps outside into a storm, and then she's like trying to hail a bunch of taxis, but she can't. So she literally hails a taxi by throwing herself in front of one to get it to stop.
Yeah, and she is very brave to wear like 6-inch high heels on a flight and also in the rain. And she's wearing like all white. Like, what? I know travel used to be different, but this is wild to me.
Oh, I had the same thought. Like, you wouldn't catch me dead wearing heels like that on an airplane. I mean, you wouldn't catch me dead wearing heels in most locations, but on an airplane, I look like I just rolled out of bed. Yeah. It's crazy. She then asks the driver of the taxi to give her a hand with her bags, but the driver does not budge. And so she gets her bags in and she tells the taxi where to take her. And we get this long shot of the taxi driving through the rain, and it's looking outside. And we get like various shots of the lights hitting the rain in different ways. And then we get this cool one where it hits a red light and it looks like there's just blood splattering everywhere outside.
It is a really cool shot, but I have to say, the windshield wipers that were available in 1970 I would have just been so pissed off the entire time. They barely get the job done, and they're like out of sync. Like, to me, this was the start of the horror of this movie.
Yes, I used to drive this old beater Mazda, and when I finally bought a new car and had like nice windshield wipers, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. It's like a whole new world. Oh. So the taxi arrives at this beautiful red and gold building, and it appears to be the dance academy. And as Susie approaches the door, another woman steps out of the academy, and she seems like she's in distress, and she says something, and then she sprints away. And Susie goes over to the intercom and says her name, but the voice on the other end of the intercom sounds like someone who's panicked, and they say, "I don't know you, go away." And Susie's like, well, just, let me in. I have a letter you guys sent me. I'll explain once you let me in. And the voice just tells her to go away. So Susie gets back in the taxi, and as they drive away, she looks into the woods on the side of the road, and she sees that woman from earlier kind of like stumble running through the woods while this crazy drumming music plays.
Yeah, and you can hear this really odd metallic voice saying "witch" in the music. It's pretty cool and kind of strange.
It is really cool. I really do like this music. The woman who is running through the woods makes it to another building, and she steps inside, and it's this very red and like geometric building. It's hard to explain without seeing it, but it's got like those checkered tile floors, and it's very visually crazy, but it's really pretty. And she goes into the elevator and goes upstairs.
Yeah, it basically looks like a 1980s Barbie mansion.
That's a good way to put it, just with a little bit of creepiness to it. But besides that, yeah, it's very, very much like that. So it cuts to this woman who we later learn her name is Pat Hingle, and she's upstairs in an apartment with her friend. And her friend owns the apartment and says Pat can stay as long as she likes and to not worry about the fact that she just got kicked out of the school. And Pat's definitely like shaken up, and she responds that she doesn't even care about being kicked out, but she can't explain what is upsetting her because it's so bizarre that nobody's going to believe her. So she takes a second and she asks if she can go to the bathroom to dry off. And while she's in the bathroom, or the other room, it's not the bathroom, a window blows open and she screams and just stands there kind of staring at it, shock. And her friend comes in and she shuts the window for her. And there's like this cool moment when she's shutting it where you see this kind of like black lace hanging outside the window. And you're not sure exactly what it is, but then the camera slowly pans out and you realize it's just laundry.
And did you notice the music here? It kind of sounds like there's like a whispering sound and like a wailing and a kind of a sighing sound.
I did. It's real. I really like this music. It's so good. But I heard like all the sighing and the wailing and the whispering. The music is so, I don't know. I just love it. But it sets a scene. It makes it almost sound like someone's like breathing outside the window. I like it.
I am so excited to tell you that a good chunk of what we'll talk about at the end is about the music.
Yay! I'm excited because I'm like ready to jam out to the soundtrack on the daily. Pat takes a second to calm down, and she tells her friend that she was just scared by the window, and so her friend leaves the room. And Pat slowly walks back to the window and keeps looking out because the laundry that's hanging there is making her jump as it blows in the wind.
Yeah, and this might be my actual least favorite horror movie trope, where someone is standing in a brightly lit room at night and they're trying to see something that's outside the window in the dark, but they don't turn off their lights. Like, have you people never spied on your messy neighbors at night? Like, turn off your light and then look. It's insane.
You're so right. It's funny because right now in the house I'm in, there's like big back windows and we don't always shut the blinds for them. So at night when I turn off the lights to go to bed, I basically like run past the windows because I don't want to see what's been out there watching me all night long.
Oh, God.
Anyway, Pat grabs a lamp and she looks closer at the window. So she does the exact opposite. Instead of turning lights off, she brings the light closer
Because that's going to do literally anything.
Right. And suddenly two eyes appear and she jumps, but she doesn't move. And then this giant hairy arm smashes through the window and grabs her head.
Hairy is one way to put that. They, they look like somebody shaved an ice yeti with a dull razor and gave up like halfway. And also, here's a fun fact. Those are the director's arms.
Oh my God. But that's fake hair, right? That's not like his real hair, is it?
I choose to believe it is fake hair because I don't want to think about it if it isn't.
Right? Like, sorry, director, man, but I really hope that's not your real hairy arm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Pat's friend hears her scream and tries to get into the room, but she can't because it's locked. So she runs out into the hallway and she's like knocking on all the neighbors' doors, begging for help, but no one's answering. And Pat's head is just slowly getting more and more pressed against the glass window. And we just see like her nose and her lips smush against it until the window finally breaks. And then it cuts to Pat standing in front of a concrete wall very suddenly. And she's stabbed a few times, but she's still alive and kind of stumbling away. And then she falls down on top of the apartment complex rooftop window. And this window is a very brightly colored yellow, red, and blue window that's like triangular with like a blue circle in the middle. And the murderer starts to tie her hands up and then he stabs her in the literal heart. Like we get a close-up shot of her being stabbed in the heart while she's screaming until her head falls through the window and her mouth is covered in blood, but it looks like this bright pink paint.
Yeah, it's entirely too bright. But I will say that open heart murder surgery bit was pretty crazy. And then the way that, that stained glass was just shattering everywhere. It's visually striking for sure.
It's very visually striking. And because this is an older movie, I was not expecting literally any gore at all in it. So when the heart just showed up on the screen, I was like, what is happening? But like, it's gory in a weird way because I don't know if it was meant to look fake or if it's just like from the times, but it looks like kind of cheesy, but I don't know. It was interesting. I liked it, but it was very unexpected.
When I tell you later what kind of cast that the director originally wanted, this scene will shock you a lot more, but we'll get there.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Pat's friend is downstairs and she's just screaming for help, banging on all the doors and nobody's answering. And then she looks up and she sees Pat's head come through the glass window in the ceiling. And then the window breaks completely and Pat falls through. And as she's falling, the rope starts to tangle around her neck. And then she's left hanging there, just covered in blood. And then the shot pans over to Pat's friend who is laying on the floor near her. And she's also dead because she's been pierced by multiple pieces of glass from the window.
Yeah, I think her head has like half of a window pane sticking out of it because there's like a giant glass shard just sticking up out of her face and her face is all bloodied up. It's pretty wild.
It is wild. Yeah, there's like a huge piece of glass in her head and one in her like stomach and yeah, just all over. And they're very big pieces of glass. It's again, very unexpected, but visually stunning. It cuts to a new scene and it's daytime and there's a blind man outside walking with his seeing eye dog and he arrives at the dance academy. He ties his dog up outside and goes in and Susie's there as well. And she follows behind him and also walks into the academy. And the academy is this very, very bright blue or like royally bright blue color. And it's really striking, like we've said a million times already.
Well, striking is the right word for it. And we are going to talk about why the color looks the way that it does. But right now, I want to talk about this wallpaper. Would you cover your walls in blue crushed velvet wallpaper like this?
Absolutely. Yes, I would. And I would because I'm a very jewel toned kind of person. Like my ideal home, it would just be like full of deep green emeralds and like dark blood red color and like that royal blue. Like if I had soul decorating of my house, it would be that very dark, heavy this. It would be a lot of this. Would you? I've seen your house. I'm going to guess that you would.
I would do this, maybe not this color, but I would do something dramatic like this, like a deep velvet, kind of just a rich color like that. You could do like some bronze tones with it for accents. There's a lot you could do with it, but it's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. Yeah. When I pictured this, I was like, oh, I would totally have this in like an emerald green for sure. Kind of like Hobbit vibes, but fancy.
You are a fancy hobbit.
That's my aesthetic pretty much. The academy is very full of people, and a woman walks out from the background and says good morning to Daniel, who is a blind man. And she sees Susie and welcomes her in and says that they were expecting her the night before. And Susie says she got there last night, but the door was locked and the woman on the call box wouldn't let her in. The woman who introduced herself apologizes and says her name is Miss Tanner and she's one of the instructors at the academy. She takes Susie over to another woman who is named Madame Blanc, and she is the vice director and was also a very famous ballerina. She's talking to 3 policemen and she excuses herself from that discussion to come meet Susie. And she welcomes Susie to the academy and mentions that the director is traveling and not there at the moment. And then there's your favorite little boy in the background of the shot reading a book. And Madame Blanc says it's her nephew and that she's very attached to him, and then asks for him to go wait upstairs.
We cannot skip over this kid. He's insane. He's very pale. He has bright blue, pale eyes, and he has like butter yellow hair. He's dressed like a Victorian prince or something. He's wearing like a velvet suit that's gray, and it has a stiff white lace collar like he is Queen Anne. It's insane. I love him. He's my Bloody Shovel Award. Weird little Victorian boy.
He is definitely given like haunted Victorian boy from a cursed painting. That was the first thing I thought when I saw him. Like if there was a painting of him in a house, it would be like people would say that their house kept burning down and people kept dying because of that little boy.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Madame Blanc walks with Susie, and she says that she quickly wants to tell her something terrible that's happened, and tells her that one of the students, Pat, who was expelled yesterday for questionable conduct, was murdered by a madman. She says that she always warns her students not to get involved with questionable friendships, and this dialogue's kind of off-putting because she goes straight from that into her saying that there's no rooms left in the academy and that it's not free, but they found a place in town for her to live with a student for $50 a week, and then she just excuses herself. And it's just like, oh, hey, by the way, one of our students got murdered. Here's your house. Bye.
Yeah, it is very odd. There's clearly a lot going on in this dance academy, but I want to talk about Miss Tanner's shoes. They look, I think they're like the 1940s Oxford style. I don't actually know. Don't come for me. I'm not a shoe girly, but they are so goth, and she just stomps around being all like sullen and German and strict, and I am obsessed with them.
I could totally see you wearing these shoes. I understand. It fits your aesthetic a little bit.
It does. I have a pair that is similar, but they're strappier. But whatever. They're cute. I love them.
Yeah, they are cute. Lots of chunky heels in this movie. But yes, they're nice shoes. Miss Tanner takes Susie upstairs with her chunky heels and tells her that the classes there last 3 years and that she must pass an exam at the end of each year. And as she's walking upstairs, Susie overhears the police and tells them that she saw Pat leaving the academy last night around 11, and she describes what she looks like. And then they continue on up the stairs, and there's this really weird moment where Miss Tanner introduces Susie to Pavlos, who is the general handyman of the school. And she says, he's very ugly, isn't he? And tells her not to be afraid to say so because he only speaks Romanian, and then like discusses his fake teeth the rest of the way up the stairs.
I know. This is insane. She's literally like, look at this dumb, ugly fuck. He's dumb as hell. You can say it to his ugly, stupid face. Like, damn, Miss Tanner, what is wrong with you?
I know. It's wild. And you can tell, like, Pavlos can definitely understand what they're saying. And as someone who, like, I've dabbled in speaking 3 different languages, like, I know the word for ugly in those languages. Like, this man knows what they're saying. And I don't know. I almost get the feeling that he's, like, cursed and not able to talk or something like that. And there's definitely more to the teeth story that they're not telling us here, but we never do get to find out what his backstory actually is.
Yeah, because she goes from calling him ugly and whatever, and then she starts talking about how he looks better now because he is wearing dentures because they pulled out all of his teeth because he had gingivitis. So I do think there's definitely something more going on there, even if that something more is just dental fraud.
It's so true. And it is funny because my cat is toothless. She had to get all of her teeth pulled because she has a genetic condition where her gums attacked her teeth, but it was not just gingivitis. We could have handled that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty insane. I know it's an American pastime to make fun of, the dental practices in Europe, but this does seem rather extreme.
It absolutely does. Susie and Miss Tanner arrive in the locker room with a bunch of dancers in it, and Miss Tanner introduces Susie to everyone in the room, and she tells Susie everything she needs is in her locker except a pair of shoes, which she'll have to borrow from somebody else, and then she leaves. And as soon as she leaves, a woman walks in making fun of Miss Tanner, and that woman introduces herself to Susie and says her name is Olga, and Susie is her new tenant, so that's where Susie's going to be living. And then another woman comes around the corner and offers Susie her shoes, but then asks if she wants to buy them. And Susie says no, that she has a pair, she just needs them for today. And the woman looks like kind of disappointed, but she says okay and then leaves. And then Susie sits down to put her shoes on, and she knocks someone's purse off the bench, and they lean down to pick up what appears to be like a cigarette holder, some lipstick, money, and then this weird little clock looking thing.
Yeah, that's a lighter, like a vintage lighter with, well, I guess it wouldn't have been vintage when this was filmed, but it's a type of lighter that has a little clock in it. And I want one so bad. I want Miss Tanner's shoes and I want this lighter. Do I smoke? No. Do I burn things? We all know the answer to this.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so we do find out later that it is for sure a lighter, and I am making mental notes for future birthday and Christmas presents for you.
Aw, yay.
Yeah, and then I'll have to get you some of that wonderful incense you burned to go along with it. It reminds me of the time where we were at a museum. It was an art museum, and it wasn't even you that my daughter could smell, but she smelled like something in the museum, and she was like, oh, I smell Eleanor coming, because she smelled incense, and it was so funny.
I love that I have a scent, but it's the scent of burning incense and not like a perfume or something. That's amazing.
Oh,
These are
yeah.
the vibes. These are the vibes I never thought I could achieve. And to have them validated by your tiny, hilarious daughter is just so special.
Perfect. I'm so glad you achieved your witchy incense vibes. But yeah, she definitely immediately, she liked it too. She was like, yeah, she smells good. So I'll have to burn some more here. The woman whose purse was knocked over introduces herself as Sarah, and she says, don't let the talk about money shake up Susie too much, as it's a common thing around there.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure what's going on here because they do have a bunch of weird conversations about money right away, and Susie looks kind of put off by it. But I think they are making fun of the American weirdness about talking about money. I think they're just poking fun of that.
Oh, I could totally see that. What I got from it, which this is just my personal, it might not be right at all, was that like all the dancers were probably really tight for money, was what I was thinking. Or it could be a nod at later when they say like that witches, all they want is wealth, or whatever that dumb old man says about witches. So,
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit of all three, honestly.
yeah, probably. It makes sense. Olga comes back after this, and she aggressively whispers both Sarah's and Susie's names in their faces. And she says she once read that the names that begin with the letter S are the same name as snakes. And there's this ridiculous moment where Olga is just hissing in Sarah's face while Sarah sticks out her tongue and grunts back at her. And it's really strange.
It is strange. They're like 3 inches from each other's faces, all of them. So it's uncomfortable. Did this strike you as childish?
Very much. Like, it felt very out of place here.
I cannot wait to tell you why at the end.
Oh gosh. Okay, I'm so ready. It cuts to Olga and Susie back in their apartment while Olga is painting her nails this bright red, similar to the blood we saw earlier. And Susie and Olga chat a little bit about what they'll do after they graduate from the academy. And Susie thanks Olga for the room. And Olga says that she does like Susie and thinks that they'll get along, and says the snake comment was just a joke. And the wallpaper in this apartment is insane. It's this incredibly busy, like black and white floral pattern, but it's literally everywhere. There's no breaks to it. But it's fun, but it's insane.
It is fun, but there's zero chance I would use this on an entire room. I'd have a migraine every single day. Accent wall, absolutely, but not the entire wall, like the entire area like she has it here. It's crazy.
No, I couldn't rest in an apartment that looked like this because of that, like migraines, headaches, whatever, but it would be nice for an accent wall. The phone rings and Olga answers it, and while she's talking on the phone, a man comes to the door of the apartment and he drops off Susie's luggage. And Susie and the man, who I believe his name is Mark, they flirt for a second, and Susie asks him if he wants to stay, but he insists he has to leave because he has to get back to the school for dinner.
I'm so sorry to do this, but I have to talk about it. It's going to bother me if I don't. The guy who's dropping off the bags, you're right, his name is Mark. His jeans are so tight that he is rocking a full-on moose knuckle. Like the tight jeans of the 1970s were a health threat, I fully believe.
I am so disappointed in myself for not noticing this. Not for a second did I even look. Now I have to go back. I must see it.
I don't think I was looking. I felt like I was being accosted by the frame.
You just could not ignore it. It was screaming at you.
Yes.
That's so funny. He leaves and Olga is still on the phone and she ends the conversation quietly by saying, "Give me some time to think about it." And then she hangs up. And then she proceeds to tease Susie and says she, quote unquote, caught one, and that Mark, the man who dropped off the luggage, is cute, but he has no money. And she then mentions that Pat liked him very much. And Olga asks Susie about when she saw Pat the night she died. Susie says that she saw her outside the school acting very strange. And Olga kind of goes into this rant about how Pat felt really terrible when she was kicked out, but she really deserved it and that she was difficult and always arguing and causing trouble. It then shows a flashback to the night that Susie saw Pat. And Susie's trying to make out what Pat was saying when she saw her. And she can't tell everything, but she does make out the word secret and iris. And she tells that to Olga. And Olga says Pat was a busybody and it would have been easy for her to find out that one of them was in a jam, but doesn't know anything about the words specifically. It cuts to dance practice the next day, and Sarah asks Susie how Olga's was, and Susie says it was nice. Miss Tanner comes out of her room and tells the 8 people who were on a list this morning to go back into the yellow room for practice. And then Madame Blanc steps out from the yellow room, and she's super excited to see Susie. She tells her that her room is ready for her, and she can move into the academy today if she'd like. And Susie says that she'd actually rather stay at Olga's if that's okay. And Madame Blanc, she seems a little taken aback and reminds her that the room is free, but she eventually does relent and she goes, "Fine, if that's what you want, so be it," and then leaves. Miss Tanner then approaches Susie and she says that she has no idea that Susie was so strong-willed and then compliments her on it and then walks away as well.
And this is super weird because it feels like Miss Tanner is trying to intimidate Susie at first, but then she kind of just backs off.
Yeah, Miss Tanner's character was confusing to me at some points because sometimes I loved her and I was like, oh, she's totally looking out for these girls. She isn't a witch. She doesn't know what's going on. And then like other times she's straight up awful. So I couldn't always get a good read on her, which was probably intentional, but definitely some weird moments from her.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the confusion is on purpose. But ultimately, I just like her. I think she's fun.
She is fun. I do like her too. I was pretty disappointed to see her in the room at the end, but we'll get to that when we get there. Susie then steps out of the practice room that they were in to head to the yellow room. And as she's walking out, she is going down this really bright red hallway.
Oh my God, this hallway. I'm sorry we keep stopping to talk about the aesthetics and the decorations and the costumes and everything, but everything is just so beautiful in this movie. This hallway is blood red and it has black goth doors. And I am going to redo my upstairs hallway like this. Like, honey, we are going to Lowe's.
No, legitimately though, we do keep stopping to talk about the visuals, but there was a moment that I was watching this movie, and I've seen the remake. This was the first time I watched the original. I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, is this movie gonna become my whole personality? Like, I was like, okay, you need to wait, you need to pause.
I'm here for it. I can't wait to see you enter your Suspiria era.
Oh, I want to so bad. It's so gorgeous. And as Susie is walking down this gorgeously bright red hallway with goth doors, she sees a woman sitting on a chair and she's polishing a bunch of silver. And we also see Madame Blanc's nephew Albert standing there behind her.
Fucking Albert, you weird Victorian boy.
And he doesn't even ever say anything in this movie either. Just a strange, haunted Victorian child.
We do get to hear him scream later. So that was fun.
The way you say that was so menacing. Speaking of, both Albert and the servant are staring at Susie very menacingly, and she walks by and that creepy intro music starts to play again, and then the servant who's polishing whatever silver thing it is, it's like this strange triangular knife-looking thing, she tilts it so that it flashes a bright light in Susie's eyes, and Susie grabs her head in pain.
I think it's the base of a candelabra, but it's super hard to tell because it's very sharp looking and very threatening looking. And then also when that light hits her eye, you get that same metallic witch noise from earlier in the music. Like witch.
Yes, you do. I like that noise. I don't know. Ugh, I just like again, this movie's going to be my personality. So Susie, all of a sudden, she seems like she's going to pass out or throw up, but she's trying to shake it off. And she kind of just shuffles down the hallway to the yellow room. And when she gets there, Sarah asks her what's wrong. And Susie says nothing. She just feels a little weak. And Daniel, the blind man from earlier, he's there. He begins to play the piano and everyone starts dance practice. Susie tells Miss Tanner that she isn't feeling well and she feels really weak and asks if she can rest. But Miss Tanner is pushing her and says that she wants to see how far along she is. And Susie tries to practice, but she's super out of it and struggling while Miss Tanner is just yelling at her. And then Susie passes out and the music stops playing and it zooms in on her face and there's just blood coming out of her nose and mouth. It cuts to Susie in a room with Miss Tanner, Madame Blanc, and another woman. And Miss Tanner is aggressively shoving this entire pitcher of what appears to be water down Susie's throat. And then she says the blood loss from hemorrhaging is gained back instantly with the intake of liquids, right, Professor? Who responds and says, obviously, but like, obviously this isn't actually true, right? Like if that's how blood was regenerated, we'd have no need for blood banks.
Right. And vampires would just be wine lushes. Exactly.
Yeah, it's super strange.
And it is super weird the way that they're trying to get her to drink because there's like two of them holding her and like forcing that pitcher down her throat and it's just sloshing everywhere and it's insane. There's no way that will work. There's no way they can think that will work. They're just making a mess. It's so weird.
It is weird. Like, there is definitely more water on her than there is in her mouth. Like, the pitcher was a strange vessel to pick. The aggressiveness with what they're making her drink it. Maybe they're, like, trying to show that this is, like, an emergency, but that's not the vibe I'm getting. It's just all very strange. So the doctor says that Susie just exercised too much after being out of practice, and that's what caused the tearing in the muscles and the hemorrhaging. And they give her a shot and say in a day or two she'll be back on her feet and back to normal.
I gotta say, so far, Susie is absolutely bombing this whole prestigious International Ballet Academy thing.
Yeah, she is. She's not doing it. I had that same thought, like, okay, she's made it through like one practice without fainting. She notices her bags there, and Madame Blanc says that Olga brought them and gave her her $50 back. And Susie is super confused and kind of upset on why Olga would do that, since she clearly wanted to stay with her, but they just move past it. And then the doctor tells her to not eat fruit and to only eat bland food and to drink red wine every night, as it'll help her blood. And again, I don't know much about hemorrhaging, but I don't think that's the correct way to recover from this.
No, if you are having a problem involving bleeding, you probably shouldn't drink alcohol that will thin your blood. But also, I wonder if you're bad at dancing and need to drink more wine is the 1970s Italian version of it's probably anxiety when it comes to women's health.
Oh gosh, maybe. Like, just drink some wine and calm down. Women's health. We've talked about it before. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But it's the worst. It cuts to Susie, who's in her new room with Sarah, and Sarah says that they're now neighbors. And Susie talks about how she was forced to move to the school, and as soon as she got sick, Olga just threw her out of her place. Susie then goes on to mention how she feels completely back to normal already, thanks to the professor, and Sarah seems shocked that Susie mentions that specific professor, but they're interrupted by Pavlos, who comes in with food and a glass of wine for Susie. And he sets it down, and while he's setting it down, he looks very intently at Sarah's lighter. And Susie makes a joke and says she better keep an eye on that lighter because he seems like he really likes it. And I mean, we talked about it earlier, but I definitely never would have guessed that it's a lighter. It looks more like a little pocket watch.
But I understand Pavlos. Like, I get it. I want one too.
Sarah mentions that it's weird that Susie's on this restricted diet that requires her to drink wine, which, thank you, Sarah. Yes, it is. And suddenly a bell in the hallway starts to ring, and Sarah says that it means it's only 15 minutes until supper and that she has to go get changed, and she leaves the room. Susie sits down in front of a mirror and she starts to comb her hair, and while she's combing it, the window starts to rattle in the breeze.
I have to admit that I appreciated the bang maintenance part of this movie as a fellow bangs haver.
That's fair. I haven't had bangs since I was a small child because I just put my hairs up in a bun 99.9% of the time. But I'm sure they would get annoying, which is why I don't have them. But they're gorgeous on you.
Thanks for that.
They are, though. I do like them on you. They're pretty. Okay. Sarah's getting changed while Susie is brushing her hair, and they both kind of start swatting something off of them. And Susie feels something in her hair and realizes that it's maggots. And she gets grossed out, which she absolutely should. And she throws the maggots on the floor. And then all of a sudden, there's just maggots everywhere, falling on everyone's head.
Okay, fun fact time. The shots of the maggots where there's like a close up of them and you can see them moving, those are real. And the director walked around on set showing the actors his bags of maggots. And the actress who plays Susie, even 25 years later in the documentary they made about this movie, she was totally grossed out by it. And I'm relieved to tell you that the maggots you see falling on them in their hair and all that, those are just long grain white rice.
Thank God, because if I just couldn't imagine, I don't care how much money you pay me, I just couldn't allow someone to just drop maggots in my hair. Like, I'm glad it was rice, but gross. I would definitely be grossed out by this too. Maggots are just so creepy. I don't like it at all. And neither do the students, because they all begin screaming and they're just covered in maggots and they're running out of their room into the hallway and it is just raining maggots from the ceiling. And Miss Tanner and the servant from earlier and Mark come into the hallway to find the source of them, and they head up into the attic, and we get a close-up of them walking over and like crunching these maggots as they walk into the attic, and it is so gross.
I don't know, but it's something about Miss Tanner and her hot, stompy goth shoes. Like, it just works for me. I mean, works for the movie. Works for the movie.
Uh-huh, yeah. Are you the AI with the foot fetish from Dungeon Crawler Carl? 'Cause
I don't know. It might be rubbing off.
yeah, but he literally stomps worms. So same vibe. In the attic, they find a box with maggots just pouring out of it, and they open it up, and it appears to be full of just very rotten food.
Why did they put all of their food in a random box in the attic? Like, what is this, Baldur's Gate 3?
I had the same thought. I was like, what in the Baldur's Gate is this? Why is there just food up here? It cuts again, and all the women who live in the school are now in a room with Madame Blanc, and she says she's mortified by what happened and apologizes. And she goes on to say that they ordered those cases of food by mail, and they thought that it was a reliable source, but obviously it was not. And they also say that the only floor that was affected by this was the one that the students live on. So Madame Blanc says they'll fumigate it in the morning, and in the meantime, they're turning the practice hall into a dormitory for the girls, and also says that the girls are welcome to go stay in a hotel if they'd prefer. It seems like most of the girls stay, and they all get a small cot in the middle of a practice hall, and all the cots are surrounded by like a weight sheet, kind of like a hospital kind of sheet, and Madame Blanc says her and the teachers will be sleeping there with them tonight. And Susie asks if the teachers live at the school as well, and Sarah says no, they stay in town and they leave every night at 9 like clockwork. And the teachers go on the opposite side of the white sheet, and when the lights turn off, it's illuminated by this bright red light, so you can see all the teachers' shadows on the other side. And then we get this almost like creepy shot of Mark's head peeking over the sheet, and he's looking down at Susie and he waves at her very childlike before he creepily sinks back down onto his side of the room. And one of the girls asks if Mark is into Susie, and she says probably. And then one of the girls mentions that she thought he was gay, and they get in a little argument, and then everybody goes to bed.
I think she was confused by the pants, just like I was. This setup is kind of interesting. It made me think, what is the worst place the military ever made you sleep?
Oh gosh, I don't have a good answer for this. Because I had a pretty cush military experience. I might have slept on an office floor. I don't even remember. But I mean, I can't complain. I've never slept anywhere crazy. However, I know you, and I know you have. So where is the craziest place the military has made you sleep?
I don't know how crazy it was, but it was uncomfortable. A cement floor in Afghanistan. It was like a storage unit, basically, out on some like little forward base. It did not belong to the U.S. It was Afghan National Army. But yeah,
dang, that's intense.
It was. I had to sleep with my team chief, and he snored real bad.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, well, I traumatized him apparently because that was back when my night terrors were kind of bad. And I was like, hey man, just so you know, I might wake up screaming.
Oh my God. So he's snoring, you're screaming, nightmare. I did have to sleep in like tents with people many times or twin beds in like El Paso, Texas. Like nothing crazy, but not like the most opportune locations. But the thing that always got me was people snoring. I can't do it. I can't stand it.
There was also this barracks that I stayed in for training on an army base, and I got there one day early, so I was alone. I swear that place was haunted as fuck. It was creepy. It was old. It was gross.
I swear, I think a lot of military bases are haunted. Just because they're all old. Like they're these old buildings that have just been there forever.
That was a terrible experience because I had my weapons because you had to train with your weapons. And because I got there one day early, there was no one else there, which meant I couldn't, like, the people who were in charge of training picked me up at the airport and just dropped me off and left. I didn't bring food with me. I didn't have food. They didn't bring me food, but I couldn't leave the campus, the barracks where we were. I could not leave the barracks because I couldn't leave my guns there unattended. So I like slept in this haunted, horrible, humid, awful barracks and had to wait until the next day. It was terrible.
Ugh, that's miserable. I could totally picture that. Like, and just like the psychological, like, I'm so hungry. Maybe they won't notice if I leave, but then you can't because you get in so much trouble.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it was a secure base, so it wasn't like you're not really in any danger, but you would definitely get in a lot of trouble if you left weapons unattended. And I was like, what, 20? I was a child, you know?
Yeah. Well, you would get in so much trouble. We had to give someone, I think it was an Article 15 for leaving his weapons in a deployed location unattended. So, yeah, you got to be careful with that. On that note, so the girls are sleeping and we get this weird overhead shot of something that seems to be almost floating over them in the room. And then we see the shadow of a woman lay down on a bed with ominous music playing. And the woman, she's right behind Sarah and Susie, and she's breathing very strangely. And it wakes Sarah up and she looks scared and wakes Susie up and asks her if she hears the weird snoring. And they realize it's coming from the woman in the bed next to them behind the sheet. And the snoring it's way more of a death rattle than it is snoring. Like, it's very, I don't know, not good.
It's not a witch, it's sleep apnea.
Yeah, you just need the like Darth Vader mask noise as well, and then sleep apnea for sure. Sarah suddenly says liars, and she explains that that's the directress, and she says she knows because one time the directress slept in a room next to Sarah's and she made that same weird snoring noise.
Yeah, and again, they seem very childish in this conversation, right? Like it feels like you are listening to a third grade sleepover.
Oh, without a doubt. Like it's giving like week away at child's camp somewhere and like in the woods in a cabin. It's definitely childish. It's now the next morning and Daniel comes into the school like he normally does and he ties up his dog outside. Madame Blanc is in the main hall and she's thanking the fumigators for clearing out the bugs. And then Daniel walks in past Sarah and Miss Tanner and Sarah asks her if the directress slept there last night with them and Miss Tanner says that she did not. She's away. And then outside, Albert and the servant woman who hypnotized Susie earlier, they are approaching Daniel's dog kind of ominously, and then it cuts to the red hallway upstairs and is empty, but we hear Albert scream outside and the dog growl. And then suddenly Miss Tanner storms furiously into the yellow room where Daniel's playing the piano, and she just starts screaming at him. And she says that his dog bit Albert and it took a piece out of his arm and that he needs stitches. And Daniel starts to kind of scream back at her and says his dog would never hurt anyone and how dare he speak about his dog that way. And then it ends in Miss Tanner throwing Daniel's cane and coat and telling him and his dog to leave. And Daniel does leave, but as he's leaving, he's screaming and saying, "Remember, I'm blind, not deaf," on the way out.
Yeah, he seems to be admitting that he knows something that he shouldn't.
Yes, he definitely heard something that he should not. And then it cuts to later that night, and Pavlos is dropping off Susie's food and wine to her room, and we get a close-up shot of her drinking the red wine. And, like, I know, I've seen enough horror movies in my day to know that they're poisoning her here, but I actually stopped to get myself a glass of red wine because it looked so good.
You are so Catholic, it's almost painful.
Yeah, sorry. I can't help it. Literally ingrained in my being.
Be who you are.
I am. That night, Sarah is in Susie's room and they're listening to the teachers leave for the night. And Susie is in bed and she's either like asleep or drunk, but she definitely is out of it. but she notices the noise enough to say that it doesn't sound like the footsteps are headed towards the front door. It sounds like they're headed deeper into the school somewhere else. And Sarah's like, oh man, you're a genius. And she tries to wake Susie up, but Susie just can't seem to open her eyes and doesn't know why. So Sarah stops and she listens to the footsteps and counts how many there are and writes it down on a piece of paper. And as she's doing it, she says, this is like the thread of Ariadne. And this is a fun little line because it's the third or fourth time that I get to talk about the Minotaur myth. Because what she's referring to here is when Theseus volunteered to be sacrificed to the Minotaur in the labyrinth of King Minos in order to kill the Minotaurs. And Ariadne, who is the daughter of King Minos, immediately falls in love with Theseus when he sees him, and she gives him a sword and a ball of thread, which is known as Ariadne's string, so that he could trace his way back out of the labyrinth of the Minotaur. And he does. She saves his life, he makes it out, and Theseus rewards her by later abandoning her on an island.
Ugh, what a mean. I do think it's funny that the myth of the Minotaur keeps coming up. Like, it's so ingrained in a lot of our culture. It's fascinating. And the fact that it comes up so much in horror specifically is really interesting to me.
It is really interesting because we had Sinister, our first episode ever, we talk about it. And then As Above, So Below, he comes back up. And now this one. So, and I feel like I'm missing one. I'm almost sure there's one other one. But I mean, it's literally one of the oldest myths out there. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot.
It is really cool. And it is a very dark story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much to it. So it makes sense why it comes back up so much. The movie then switches to a first-person's perspective of someone walking through the school while tense music is playing. And they enter a door right off of the red hallway, and it's filled with like a bunch of plants. And then it cuts to a shot of the moon. And then all of a sudden, we're in this wonderful German bar with a bunch of men in lederhosen on top of a table doing a delightful little dance. And I just want to be here. Like, please take me here.
Oh, they are so cute. Just being so German. It's wonderful. But I have to tell you this. Are you familiar with what's known as Hitler's Bierhallputsch?
Yes, very much. Yeah.
Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, Hitler's failed coup attempt in Munich in 1923 was referred to as the Bierhallputsch. You can read about it on Wikipedia or whatever. And this is why he went to prison, where he would eventually write Mein Kampf. And this pub that they're filming in is the actual pub where it happened.
Oh my God. That is nuts. That's so, I mean, that's not cool, right? That's not cool, but that's wild. I wonder why. Did they say like why they chose to film it there?
I think just because it's a famous German pub. I don't really go into this, so I can say it here. I did see some write-ups that you could just say like, well, the director was literally born at the time of Mussolini, and all of that bit of history kind of was just so present and where he grew up, and it comes up in his art. There are also people who draw parallels between fascism and witchcraft, so you could probably explore that quite a bit. That's not where I take us later, but it's worth looking at. It's interesting.
That's crazy interesting. Wow, that's cool. I never would have guessed that. So Daniel is sitting there in this very infamous bar, and he's just hanging out kind of alone, and then an older woman grabs him and helps him out of the bar. And as he's walking home with his dog, that chimey music from the intro starts to play again. And I, like, at this point, I'm just jamming out to the music. Like, I know something horrible is about to happen, but I just love this music so much.
It's really disturbing, but yes, I agree. I like it too. And also, more fun facts. Where Daniel is walking, it's like this big open square with like Roman-looking columns and buildings. This is a place in Munich called Königsplatz, and it's where Hitler and the Nazis had a bunch of really infamous rallies where they gave some of their like most evil speeches. So there is more than one level of horror happening here.
Now that you say it, like I can visualize it in some of the like older pictures and videos. I think I know where they're at. That's crazy too.
Yep, you are probably picturing the correct one. It's pretty infamous.
Wow. Gosh, I didn't even notice. I was like, I'm sure these are like historic buildings, but I didn't realize. Wow. Crazy. So in this scene, the dog starts to aggressively bark, but it seems like no one else is around. This whole plaza is empty, and you can hear some whispering, and Daniel tries to calm the dog down, but it doesn't seem to work. So Daniel starts to get freaked out, and he's screaming, "Who's there?" But no one's answering. And there's more whispering, and the dog starts to whimper while Daniel gets more upset. And then this bird flaps overhead, and we see a bunch of shadows on the buildings surrounding Daniel.
Did you think it was a bird? Because like I definitely hear the wing flapping, but I have a different theory that I'll save for later.
I mean, I got the vibe it was a bird, but, like, the vibe in the sense that, like, they were using the birds to, like, spy on Daniel, to, like, look at him. But
Oh,
that,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, they were seeing through the bird's eyes.
Yeah, bird's eye view. When I was watching this, I convinced myself at a certain point that the shadows you see on the buildings are outlines of women on broomsticks. I still don't know if I'm correct, but I hope so.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go back and look. I hope so too. Ah, that would be cool. I bet it is. I'm gonna go with it is. It must be. Okay.
It feels right.
It does. All of a sudden, Daniel's dog just turns on him and he bites his throat and just kind of thrashes him around until Daniel dies. And then the dog literally just starts to eat him. And the police see this happening and run over and scare the dog away, but it's definitely too late. And I kind of hated this. Like, that puppy dog and Daniel had a deep bond and they were best friends and he was a good boy and trusted each other. And it's just like super sad to see them use his own dog against him because dogs are so cute.
Yeah, but say what you will about cats. At least they'll wait till you're actually dead to eat you.
That's true, but I don't know. Could it just be because of their size that they don't try to do it sooner?
No.
No, they're loyal.
No,
They are.
exactly.
Yes. Back at the school, the girls are talking about Daniel's death and saying how you can't trust wolfhounds. And then the girls joke about how maybe the school is hexed and it needs an exorcist. And then Susie goes to Madame Blanc's office and Susie says that she wants to talk to her about some of the stuff that's been happening at the school lately. And she asks if they know anything yet about who killed Pat. And Madame Blanc says that the police do have some leads. And Susie reminds her that she saw Pat the night that she got there and she was mumbling some strange words. And she mentions that she heard her say secret and irises. And Madame Blanc says Susie did a great job and then calls the police to tell them. And I honestly couldn't tell here if she was being sincere or if she was pissed off that she didn't tell her sooner or what's happening.
I read it as she was glad that Susie was giving her info that she could use against her. Like Susie's walking right into the trap and she doesn't even know.
Oh, yeah, I could see that for sure. Like, ooh, thanks for telling me. Now I'll get you, my pretty.
Exactly.
After this, Sarah and Susie go swimming, and Sarah tells Susie that Susie messed up and she's now sent the teachers on a hunt for someone. Sarah says that the night Pat was murdered, Pat tried to tell Sarah something, but she was in such hysterics and got scared that she ran away. And Sarah admits that the night Susie showed up to the school, Sarah was the voice on the call bell. And as they're swimming and talking, we get this first person's perspective again of someone up on the balcony watching them swim.
This pool is gorgeous. The actress who plays Sarah says it's her favorite part of the entire movie, and I can see why.
It is so pretty. If I went to this school, I would be in that pool all the time. And I'm not even like a big pool fan, but like, how can you ignore that? It's so pretty.
And it's like swimming in a palace.
Literally. It's so nice. Sarah then tells Susie that Pat was taking notes on strange events that were happening at the school and that she gave those notes to Sarah. She says the only other person she's told any of this to is her friend Frank Mandel, who is in the area for a convention. And then she tells Susie that she can come over to read the notes that night. Later that night, Sarah's trying to wake up Susie, but she can't. She's super drugged up again. But Sarah still talks to her, and she seems super upset, and she's saying that the notes are gone. Someone stole them. Sarah says that the only thing they didn't take was the note that she wrote the night before about where the teachers were walking and where the footsteps led. She then asks Susie if she knows anything about witches, and right when she says this, Susie passes back out, and then there's footsteps outside of Sarah's door. So Sarah's clearly frightened and says she must get away. And we hear that door open and Sarah gets up and turns off the lights, and then she sees a light in the other room turn on and she lets out this silent scream, and then she tries to sneak out into the hallway. And as soon as she does sneak out, someone enters into Susie's room and we see Susie there just sleeping. Back out in the hallway, Sarah starts to run, but the doors she's trying to get into are locked, so she decides to sneak up into the attic. And then it cuts to someone in this long black cloak-looking thing opening a box that contains a knife and 2 pins.
I also want that knife and those pins and that box. Surprising no one.
Yeah, it is a very nice red velvet, like, lined box. I wonder what the pins are for. Like voodoo doll stuff? Who knows?
Oh, I'll call it out when we get to it. Because they are.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, they are used again. But yeah, I just,
Okay.
when somebody's going to do a murder, I just like the drama that they put into it.
And this scene has plenty of that. So Sarah's in the attic and there's this weird little side door that opens up, and she ignores it and just kind of like hides against the wall somewhere else. But as she's hiding there, an arm grabs her and she falls like dramatically through 2 glass doors. And then she goes into the side room from earlier and locks it. And just, this is a scene that did it for me. Everything about the scene just tickled me in the perfect way. Like, it is so freaking funny, but not funny in like a bad way. It's not meant to be funny. I just loved it. It almost made this movie one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm barely exaggerating. I loved it so much.
There is so much that is about to happen, and it's so odd. So I can definitely see why.
Yes. So Sarah is sitting in this room and she sees the door's locked. She's just sitting there against it. And then she sees this knife slowly slide through and it's trying to pick the lock. And it's that kind of lock that literally all you got to do is lift up on it. All the person on the other side had to do was move the knife up and the lock would have come undone. But the person trying to pick the lock seems to have like a -10 to the sleight of hand and just cannot make it budge.
Yes, bad on stealth.
Yes. And speaking of bad on stealth, Sarah chooses to just stare at this painfully slow lock-picking attempt until she sees a window that she's able to sneak out of from this room. And she just takes all the time in the world to stack some luggage or like boxes on top of each other and climb through this window while the lockpicker continues to struggle. And at this point, I realized like I'm almost 100% sure that the person who's picking the lock was just toying with her because no one could possibly be this inept at lockpicking. Like it's just not possible.
Yeah, they've got a +10 to psychological torture.
Absolutely. And so Sarah climbs through the window into the next room and she sees a way out. However, she absolutely fails her perception check here and does not look at her surroundings before jumping into this giant ball of wire. And I immediately had 2 thoughts here. 1, I wondered if this is how Jigsaw got his barbed wire trap idea. And 2, I have absolutely had D&D campaign moments that have turned just like this because I'll be like, and I step forward and the DM's like, you didn't say you looked at the ground. You fall through a giant hole.
We 100% had the same thoughts here. I have this in my part of the notes as a Jigsaw wire trap. And you are also correct about D&D sessions going like this. And that is why I have to use my backup character because, by the way, your DM from college that you introduced me to killed my magic user lawful evil elf character after like 1.5 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry. He's killed very many of my beloved characters and pets, and it's always so sad. But I will say, I don't think I've ever lost one that I've had for 1.5 years. I think like most of the time I'm like, okay, whatever, my character died. But that would be a little heart-wrenching for me. An emotional moment for sure.
I know. My backup character is her brother, so it'll be fine.
Did she go out in a cool way at least, or was it kind of lame?
No, it wasn't cool at all.
Oh no. And yeah, and you guys play first edition, which is like you get 3 hit points and when you're dead, you're dead. So speaking about being dead, Sarah is hopelessly tangled in this giant ball of wire and just cannot get out. And she lets out a blood-curdling scream right before her throat is aggressively slit. And she dies and it fades to black.
Here's some more fun facts for you. That wire, the look they were going for with all that wire was they wanted it to look like barbed wire. It doesn't, not even a little bit, but that's what they're going for here. But the actress said when she was finished filming the scene that she only did 1 time, it looked like she'd been bitten by thousands of ants because the direction that she got from the director was just to throw herself in the wire and wiggle around until she dies. And all of the wires were like pinching her as she was doing this. Like the coils of wire were just pinching her skin.
Oh, ouch. I could totally picture like how that felt, not on a full body scale, but like pinching your finger in like a slinky, like a bent up slinky. Ouch. I did wonder if that was the case because it looks like, and I think that makes it make so much more sense because the way she moves through the wire looks like there's like barbs going into her and she's in pain and all of that. And I guess the fact that she was in real pain probably helped that. Because I was like, if this is really just wire, like just slowly stand up. But barbed wire, it makes more sense that you would not be able to do that. It then appears to be the next morning and Susie's awake and she goes into Sarah's room and it's a disaster. And Miss Tanner's there and she says that Sarah disappeared last night and she packed up all of her bags and left around 6. And Mark appears as well.
Yep, here we go. Mark Moose Knuckle.
And Miss Tanner asks Mark if he heard her leave, and he says yes, he heard Sarah drive off that night, and Miss Tanner says if she wasn't happy, she should have just told someone, and then she angrily walks down the hall. And Susie, of course, isn't really buying any of this, so she gives a call to Frank Mandel, and she asks if he knows where Sarah is because she disappeared and took all of her luggage, and he says no, so she asks if she can meet Frank somewhere, and he says yes, come meet me at the convention center. And then it cuts to Miss Tanner and Madame Blanc walking down the staircase discussing why Sarah may have gone missing, and Madame Blanc says that she'll just call her father in Geneva and see if she went there. Susie later meets with Frank, and he says that he called Sarah's father, but he was away for the weekend and wouldn't be back until Monday. And Frank says that they really shouldn't worry until her father gets back, and he goes on to say that 3 years ago, Sarah was one of his patients after she had a mental breakdown regarding her mother's death. He says they remained friends after that, but she began to have delusions about the school because of one of her friends planting ideas in her head.
Hello, person I do not know. Here is my former patient's medical information. Whoopsie. Also, another fun little fact. There's these planters, like the garden planters that they're sitting around. There's somebody hiding in one of those in this shot, feeding Frank his dialogue because apparently they were so pressed for time that he didn't have time to know his lines. You can't see them in the shot, but it's so funny to imagine.
Oh my gosh, now I have to go back and watch because I didn't think he was the best actor in the world, but I didn't think he was awful either. So that's interesting. That's really funny that there was just a person behind that plant. Frank says that Sarah had discovered that the Tam Academy was founded in 1895 by Helena Marcos, a Greek immigrant, and that the locals believed she was a witch. Susie pauses and says she has a strange feeling that somebody's already told her something similar to that, but she can't exactly remember. Frank then goes on to say that the Marcos women had been expelled from several European countries and that something about her made religious people persecute her.
Yeah, something about her made religious people persecute her. She had a vagina and an opinion. That's what it was. Vicious womb.
Vicious wandering wombs. Yes, all of us. He goes on to say that this woman also wrote a number of books and went by the name the Black Queen. She then settled down at the Tam Academy after she got a lot of money, and then in 1905 she died in a fire. The school was then taken over by her favorite student, and the study of the occult was abandoned, and it became a famous dance academy. Susie takes all this in and asks what it means to be a witch, and Frank says he believes that witches are caused simply by mental illness and says that bad luck isn't brought on by broken mirrors, but by broken minds. He then introduces Susie to Professor Milius, who wrote a book called Paranoia or Magic. Susie asks Professor Milius if he believes in witches, and he says he's known some women who were said to be witches. Susie doesn't believe him, but asks him what witches do, and he says they're negative and destructive. He says they have tremendous power that can change people's lives, but they only do it to harm. He then says that their goal is to achieve great personal wealth, but only at the detriment of others, and that they can cause illness or death to those who offend them.
My guy, you are describing billionaires and politicians.
I know. I was so disappointed to be like, really? That's what witches want? Wealth? Please. That's the last thing I'd ask for. Anyway, so she asked him if he's ever heard of Helena Marcos, and he says yes, she was a talented witch with a great power for doing evil. Susie asks if she would have had a coven here, and he says that the queen of the coven is 100 times more powerful than the rest of the witches of the coven, which is like a serpent, and a coven deprived of its leader is like a headless cobra, harmless. He then says something in Latin, and he says it means magic is everywhere, and you don't happen to know what he's actually saying here, do you?
I won't say I happen to know, but I did look it up. He's saying a Latin phrase. It's quadam obique, quadam semper, quadam ab omnibus creditum est. And now you're all cursed. No. He says it means magic is always believed everywhere and all over the world. But it is Latin for what is everywhere, what is always, and what is believed by all people. Charlie, as the show's official Protestant-born heretic, I am so excited to tell you that this is a Catholic orthodoxy test that supposedly came from St. Vincent in the 400s. But in the movie, I think this character is just taking a Catholic idea and saying, well, maybe magic is everywhere. I should also note, and I love this so much, and I saved this little nugget for you. I read in an interview where the director was asked what it is about Italians that made them so good at making horror, and without missing a beat, he goes, oh, it's the Catholicism.
Oh my God, it's so Izzo. He's not wrong.
We've talked about this. Nobody does goth shit like the Catholics.
Legit. Like it, I mean, have you looked at the European Catholic churches? Like they're nuts. They're so
I
goth.
want to live in one.
They're so cool. Oh, that's hilarious. As you know, my mom's 100% Italian and I'm 50%. So I got the Italian bit and the Catholic bit. So no wonder I like horror. It's in my blood, literally.
Literally.
Susie goes back to her room after this little discussion with Frank and the professor, and she looks at her dinner, which is literally, it's a piece of cheese, a single lemon, and a glass of wine. And she doesn't eat any of it and goes out into the hall to find somebody, but they're all gone. And the servant woman at the end of the hall tells her that they all went to the theater for the night. And Susie goes back to her room and she tries to call Frank and tell him about all the strange things that are happening at the school, but a storm starts and the power goes out and the phone line cuts out. So she takes her dinner to the bathroom and she flushes it down the toilet and then dumps the wine into the sink. And it's basically this like red dyed oobleck substance.
I don't know what an oobleck is.
Oobleck is, you've absolutely played with oobleck. It's almost equal parts water and cornstarch. And then you like, it's that thing where if you push down on it, it's a solid, but if you pick it up, it's a liquid.
Oh, yes. I didn't know
Yes.
that's what it was called. I have no idea if I have a noun for that substance. I didn't know it was oobleck. I don't know what I would have called it if you'd asked me about it. Huh.
I think that there's other names for it besides oobleck, but my daughter's obsessed with it and she puts food dye in it. So I've very much seen exactly what's in this sink in this scene.
Yes, I think your description is correct now that I understand what that is.
Perfect. So she does try to watch the bloody oobleck wine concoction off the sink, but she does a terrible job. And then she turns out the light and she sees a pair of glowing eyes outside the window. And she opens up the window and this bat flies in and just attacks her. And I have had this nightmare. I've mentioned it before. I hate rabies, terrified of rabies. And I specifically had a dream where this bat bit me like this, and then a witch locked me in her basement to stop me from going to the doctor to getting a rabies shot, and I had to battle her to escape. So it's like, it's so relevant here.
I know this about you, and the way I thought of both you and my sister-in-law in this scene, but for entirely different reasons, hilarious. Also, this thing looks like a cat toy.
Oh, it absolutely looks like a little vibrating cat toy, but why did you think of your sister-in-law? I have to know.
She loves bats.
Oh,
yeah. I had to stop myself from buying bat stuff for her all the time. I mean, I still do, but like I had to be like selective about it because I'll go over it with it.
That's hilarious. Now I have more mental gifts for everyone in my head. This is a great episode for gift giving. So Susie captures the bat and she throws a towel over it and she starts crushing it to death. And after that, instead of seeking medical attention, she decides to go take a smoke, which, okay.
Well, why not? The doctor prescribed her red wine for a bleeding issue. So like smoke after a bat. Why not?
I mean, I don't know. Go into town. Go to the emergency room. Rabies. Come on, rabies.
They're just going to tell her she worked out too hard and needs to smoke a whole pack or something. They're not going to give her a shot.
That's fair. That's fair. They're not going to take care of her. And she knows this. So while she's sitting there smoking, she finds the note that Sarah made regarding the footsteps and where in the school all the teachers go at night. So Susie leaves her room and starts to sneak down the hallway, following where the footsteps lead on the note. And she decides to wear the chunkiest heels she could find for the stealth mission for whatever reason. And it's just like -5 for stealth, Susie. Get it together.
Once again, we have literally the exact same note. And I'm just like, you're a literal ballerina. You have quieter shoes. Why are you wearing clunky heels to sneak around?
It makes no sense. It really doesn't. Susie then comes across the kitchen where all the servants are cooking and she sprints past them, evading them. And then she finds herself in Madame Blanc's office. And she's standing in this office and she is taking forever to notice the 4 colorful irises on top of a painting of a literal door in this office. And when she finally does see them, she remembers that the night Pat died, she said that she saw something behind the secret door and to turn the blue iris. So Susie goes up to the iris and turns it and the secret door opens. Susie steps inside to find this long hallway with words written all along it and this floral pattern underneath. And it's really pretty. Like I would definitely have, you have the red hallway. This would be the hallway in my house. I would make it like this. But more importantly than my house decor, do we know what any of these words are? Did you look any of them up? I'm curious.
I did. They are more of an aesthetic. They kind of hint at what's going on here, but I'm not going to spend any time on them when we get to the end. But they're all written in Latin and German and Hebrew. There's a word or a phrase, interiora occultum, which means hidden interior. The word metamorphosis appears. And I think the Latin word for bees is also like next to a large red rose.
Oh, interesting. I feel like I saw one word that looked similar to Satan as well, but like not that. I don't know what it exactly was, but I tried to take a peek. There weren't that many, like I couldn't make a lot out, but that's interesting.
There might have been, but yeah, it's mostly for the aesthetic and hinting at that there's something occult and black magic happening here.
That makes sense. So at the end of this hallway, Susie hears Madame Blanc saying that the situation can no longer be tolerated. And Susie hides behind a curtain and listens to Madame Blanc say that they have to make the American girl vanish, disappear, etc. She goes on like a little tirade about it. And then Miss Tanner comes up to her and offers her a piece of some kind of food that she takes a small bite of, followed by a cup to drink. And this definitely, I mean, this is like, speaking of Catholicism, like the body and blood of Christ, for sure.
It looked, I don't know what that food was, but it looked like a brick of tofu. Like it looks like she just took a bite of a brick of tofu.
I literally thought it looked like a piece of flesh. I was like, oh, flesh and blood, quite literally happening here. But yeah, tofu and flesh look very similar, so valid. She says, Helena, give me power, and then she drinks from the cup, and she says, sickness, away with her, and then screams death a few times while some of the other witches hold her down. And then it appears that while this is happening, Albert and Pavlos notice Susie hiding there. So Susie turns around and she finds this very dead Sarah behind her with her hands nailed to an altar. And Pavlos comes looking for her, and he's using Sarah's lighter while he's looking for her. And then Susie, she hides in the side room and she hears that wheezing sound that her and Sarah heard the night that they all slept together. And she sees the directress sleeping in a bed draped with sheer curtains. And she goes to leave, but she sees Pavlos and she's startled, so she knocks something over, which wakes up the directress.
When Susie found Sarah's body, Sarah's eyes are being held open with those two pins that we saw from earlier.
How did I not notice that?
The makeup is kind of insane. That's probably why. And she's like, her body's has evidence of torture, right? So there's a lot going on.
Oh yeah, I thought the body was like very well done. It was pretty disturbing. I mean, not like well done in the fact that like it looked realistic in any way, but it was unsettling. Like it was definitely a creepy dead body. But I totally missed the pins. That's so cool.
Yeah, and they're like these like long pins with pearl heads. They're really pretty, which is why I said I like them. They're very dramatic.
They are dramatic.
But yeah, now they're dramatically in her eyeballs.
Oof, ouchie. The directress sits up and then in this very demonic and angry voice asks who's there. And then she starts to laugh and says she's been expecting Susie. The directress says, you want to kill me? You want to kill Helena Marcos? And Susie grabs a knife off the floor and approaches the bed. But when she pulls the curtain, there's no one there. Helena starts to taunt her a bit and asks her what is she going to do now? And she says death is coming for her and that hell is behind that door. And the door handle on the black door in the room turns slowly, and then we see a dead Sarah step out from behind it, holding a knife and cackling. Susie freaks out for a minute, but when the lightning strikes, she can see an outline of Helena on the bed. And she waits again for the lightning to strike again, and then she stabs Helena through the throat. The dead Sarah at this moment just screams and disappears, and Helena appears and slowly dies. And she's like this incredibly wrinkled, older person with like basically black skin, and it's a very classic evil hag look. I wonder too if they purposely like this, if they darken the skin to make it look like she's charred because they said she died in a fire, but I'm not sure.
It definitely looked like burnt skin.
I guess that explains the wheezing too, because the smoke inhalation from a fire and all of that.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
I just put it together right now. So Susie runs out of the room and she sees all the other witches seemingly like in pain or dying. And Pavlos is on the floor just covered in blood. And then everything just starts randomly exploding. And there's like wind coming out of nowhere and the walls start cracking and the entire building is falling apart. And Susie makes her way out.
I have to tell you, the guy who was in charge of these exploding special effects evidently had been injured from something unrelated at the time of the filming. And because of that injury, half of his body was in a cast. So the actors later, when they're doing like the documentary 25 years later, they're like, yeah, we were not confident in how safe we were going to be.
Oh my gosh. Truly, like Susie does a good job of like showing fear and hesitation in these moments. She probably was just truly terrified to like touch anything.
It was probably real fear.
Yes, I think so. So once Susie gets out, she runs forward a little bit and then she laughs and she walks away. And the dance academy bursts into flames and we hear screaming while the credits roll. An end of fantastic movie. But I do have to ask, why do you think she was laughing at the end?
I think Susie was laughing because she won. Like, she's like, I got you. You guys wanted to kill me for a human sacrifice or whatever, but I win.
That's fair. That could be it for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And before we dig deeper, I have to ask, who do you think was doing the strangling at the beginning and who was influencing the dog to kill the blind guy?
I kind of just assumed that the killer at the beginning was Pavlos because he's like supposed to be quote unquote ugly and the arms are so hairy. But I truly have no idea. I did think about that and I couldn't come up with an answer. But for the dog being influenced, I assumed it was Madame Blanc doing that because they thought that Daniel heard something that he shouldn't have. But now I have to know. Who did you think it was?
This is my personal headcanon. It's not written anywhere from like the writer or the director or whoever. I don't know if anyone else has this theory, but my personal theory is it's Albert.
You think it's Albert?
I think it's the weird little Victorian boy. Remember how Madame Blanc is like, oh, he's my nephew. I'm very attached to him. I think he's her familiar in some weird boy disguise.
I could see that, but that big old hairy arm, does he like transform?
Oh, yes.
This is just like little boy is his familiar form and then he...
Metamorphosis. Or the big hairy arm, the ice yeti is his normal form and the little boy is his glamour.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I love it. It has to be. He is her familiar. Because I did wonder, I was like, well, why is she... There has to be something to the fact that she's so attached to her quote-unquote nephew. So, and he never really speaks, so familiar totally fits.
Yeah, and they never explain it. He's there when the person is shining that light in Susie's eye and somebody's saying witch, so they're like marking her for the sacrifice. That's what I think.
I love it. I'm adopting it. You always come up with the best ideas. So good. Okay, so on that note, we dug into the plot. So can you tell me, what did you unearth in this creepy and wonderful ballet school in Germany or Italy or wherever this acid trip takes place?
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your team, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
This one goes out to all my ladies, all my multitasking mamas who need energy to show up at work and at home, all my empty nest explorers who need a little gut health support for the journey ahead. AG1 is the daily health drink designed to support whole body health with over 75 essential nutrients and pre- and probiotics, so you can make the most of every day and every decade. Learn more at drinkag1.com.
Oh, I can't wait to tell you. I am going to dig into the film's inspiration. I'm going to dig into how it was filmed, and then we're going to dig into the music. So first, the inspiration, or I should say inspirations, because there are a few threads to this. The director said that he took inspiration from a road trip that he took with Daria Nicolodi across Europe. Daria co-wrote the screenplay for this film, and she was also an actress and a creative partner with Dario in other films and his romantic partner at times. In this Euro trip, they specifically sought out locations that had occult significance. Like, this is incredible. What a road trip. I want this so bad.
Listen, one day before we die, we'll go to Europe and we're going to all the haunted castles. We're doing this. Like, let's call them up and are they alive still? Let's get their notes, find out where they went, because we're going there.
I do have notes on where they went. We're about to talk about it. They went to several places across Europe, including a place in Switzerland called Dornach. In Dornach, there is an organization called the Anthroposophical Society. Now, Anthroposophy is a spiritual movement that was founded by a guy named Rudolf Steiner in the early 1900s. This is the belief that a spiritual world is both objective and able to be experienced by humanity. They built what is basically a university for their society that they called the Gerthianum, and this is what Dario and Daria visited on their road trip. It seems to be like a really interesting human-focused mix of science and magic. You could call it spirituality, you could call it pseudoscience, but they call it anthroposophy.
So to make sure I'm understanding this, so their belief was that like they could intentionally experience like the spiritual world, like what, like they could like talk to the dead.
Yeah,
kind of thing?
spirituality and occult stuff is real, and you can measure it scientifically.
Ah, got it. Okay, so like voice recorders and like those spiritual thingies and all that. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not saying that they're the ones who came up with the tools, but like the idea is that there's tools that you can measure to see that the spirit world is there.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of everything. You'll see the term esoteric thrown around a lot when you start reading about this stuff. If you go online, they have a website that's still up and running today, and the Gerthianum still exists today. Like you could go visit it. And there's also an American chapter of this organization. I actually tried to get a feel for what their ideas really are. So I looked at some of their like teaching material and stuff like that. It's very wooey, but it seems also kind of interested in science. So I don't know, it's peculiar, but I think it probably would have looked a little bit different back in the 70s when Daria and Dario visited.
That's cool. I'm curious. I'll definitely look that up a little bit more. I mean, I'm certainly not joining, but I want to read about it.
Yeah, exactly. So Daria and Dario visited this academy of sorts in the 70s, and they were inspired by this kind of search for the magic and also the exploration of the occult and this really beautiful campus. Like you should look at pictures of it. It's quite lovely. But there's more. According to Daria, her grandmother had an experience with a mysterious and perhaps sinister black magic coven. Daria says that her grandmother told her about a time when she was younger and attended piano lessons somewhere in Europe. At some point in the lesson, it became clear to her that the piano school was actually full of witches who were up to no good. And she got so scared that she fled and never went back. Both Daria and Dario said this was part of the inspiration at the time that Suspiria was filmed, but Dario later said that they had made it up. I think Daria maintained that the story was true, but it's unclear to me, and honestly, I kind of like it as a mystery.
Oh, that is so interesting. The haunted piano school. Because I wondered, I was like, okay, so there's a witch coven in Europe. Why dance? Like, why a dance school? So they just took that idea from the story and turned a piano school into a dance school. So there's still music. That's cool.
Yeah, and I have no trouble believing that Daria's grandmother told her a weird story that was either loosely based on reality or completely made up. I have no trouble believing that when Daria and Dario were no longer together, Dario was like, no, I wrote the story. That background thing was just made up. Like, I have no trouble believing any of this.
Oh, I agree. I mean, every kid, even if that wasn't exactly what Daria's grandma said, like someone said something similar to that and Dario ran with it. So yeah, at least that's my belief.
Right. The director also said that he wanted to combine occult themes with fairy tales. Can you guess the fairy tales?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. Like, I mean, stuff with witches.
Right, like Snow White.
Oh yeah, Snow White. Yeah.
So he says Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, and Snow White, and then another one called Bluebeard. Have you ever heard of Bluebeard? And this is not a pirate.
Yeah. No, I have. I have heard of the story of Bluebeard. He's a guy who murdered all of his wives.
Yes, a fairy tale about a guy who murders all his wives. That's exactly what it is. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But Dario said he was really fascinated by the witch from Snow White. And when he was looking for his lead actress, he really liked the look of Jessica Harper because she kind of looked like Snow White. So these big, dark eyes and dark hair and like really pale, round face. Most of us have heard the stories of Alice in Wonderland and Pinocchio and Snow White, but Bluebeard is not one that was very familiar to me. I can see elements of it in other stories, but I didn't know this one, but just like you said, it's just about a man who can't stop murdering all his wives. Basically, he was a rich man who would marry someone and that person would mysteriously disappear, and it just kept happening. So one day he marries the youngest of several sisters, and he tells her that she's allowed to go anywhere in the mansion except for one door that's underground. One day he takes off for a trip, and what do you know it? She goes where she wasn't supposed to, and she finds the bodies of all of his other wives strung up in a serial killer basement kind of a situation. She manages to get help from her brothers, and they all murder Bluebeard before he can murder her, and then she ends up with all of his wealth. So I think here you can kind of see the pointless human sacrifice element that was kind of being brought into the film.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. And also, but also the like secret room that you can't go into is part of it. And then like the ability to charm these young girls, but also, murder them. It makes sense. I definitely see the parallels there.
Yeah, and in the end, the protagonist ends up winning and presumably walks away with all the wealth or burns it all down, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. Yeah. I definitely see the inspiration there. I think that's cool. I would have never come up with it on my own, probably because Bluebeard's not that popular of a fairy tale. There's no Disney movie about the wife murderer.
Yes, exactly. Now, in keeping with the fairy tale theme, Dario Argento intended that the ballet students were all between 8 and 10 years old. Can you imagine this movie, but with 8 to 10-year-old kids?
Absolutely not. Like, why did he ever think that was a good idea?
That is the exact question his producers had, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. But yeah, he absolutely wanted you to imagine this with kids, to the point that when he was basically forced to change it to 16 to 20-year-olds, he kept the dialogue virtually unchanged. So all that silly kind of girlish tongue sticking out and childish dialogue, that was on purpose.
That's crazy. It makes a lot more sense because like that snake bit is so weird. And like, it's funny too, because now that you say that with the money bit, you know how they do the money scene there? And we were like, well, that's kind of weird. Knowing that he was inspired by Pinocchio and wanted these actresses to be children, I think there's a scene in Pinocchio that's kind of like that. So it's all clicking for me now, but I kind of hate it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. And also, did you notice in that goth hallway that I kept gushing about, did you notice how high the door handles are on all of the doors?
No, I didn't. Are they high or low?
They're very high. If you go back and look at it, they're like shoulder height to the dancers.
Oh, okay. Now that you say it, I'm trying to visualize it. And yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's supposed to give you the idea that these are children. But there were a couple of very good reasons for this to not be children, at least from the producer's point of view. This was a very graphic movie, especially for the time, like we've talked about. And the producers are like, no one wants to watch a bunch of kids get murdered and slashed up on the big screen. Absolutely not. And also, Dario Argento was known for giving kind of vague direction to the cast because he was very vibes-based as far as what he wanted to see. He was focused mostly on the aesthetic and on stunts and special effects. So he needed grown-up actors to understand what he was trying to get out of them. But when you work with small kids, that simply isn't going to work, especially when you're probably working through several translators, which we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Plus, I think the producers knew that Dario is just kind of weird to work with, and it would end up being an absolute disaster and probably a failure of the film if they didn't indeed go with child actors.
Yeah, no, nothing about that's okay. Like, nobody wants to see a child get stabbed through the heart and then thrown out of a window. Like, that's not cool. And it was very gory for the time. I'm glad they changed it. Good job on the producers for making him use adults because, yeah, that's not okay at all. And yeah, it wouldn't have worked. I do see how he is more focused on the visuals, and I know you're going to talk about it more, and the special effects. Both of those are very present in the movie. So yeah, you definitely need actors that can translate that appropriately.
When I was reading about him wanting to use children, I imagined that if he got his way, this movie probably would have been on one of those, 40 banned movies from Europe in the 1970s or whatever. Like it probably, if it got released and made it all, it probably would have been on a bunch of lists and like banned and censored and all that.
Yeah, it would be like 5 of the most disturbing movies you've never heard about.
Why do they all have that voice?
I don't know.
Okay, and there's one more thread of inspiration that I want to talk about, and that relates to the name of the movie as well as the background of who these witches are. There was an English writer from the mid-1800s named Thomas de Quincey. He was famous for basically inventing, at least in the Western world, a tradition in literature called addiction literature. Have you ever heard of this genre?
I can't say I've studied that genre or heard of it specifically, but what comes to mind immediately are two things. And one I've already talked about. I feel like House of Leaves could definitely fall within that because the main protagonist in that book he's a drug user that's going insane. And then probably what is one of the most disturbing movies out there is Requiem for a Dream comes to mind as well.
That is, Requiem for a Dream is one of the examples I had in mind as well. Exactly, yes. Also, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, I think. But anyway, one of De Quincey's best known pieces was called Confessions of an English Opium Eater, which chronicled his struggles with opium addiction throughout his life. And this is so interesting. I had no idea how influential this essay was. Evidently, there are references to it all over the place. For example, in the video game Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, there is an in-game book called Confessions of a Dunmar Skooma Eater, which is a reference to the fictional drug in the game. Did you ever play this game?
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I never played Elder Scrolls 3. I've played Oblivion and Skyrim. Most recently Oblivion because they just came out with it remastered, which is great if anyone's looking for a fun game to play. But no, I've never not Elder Scrolls 3.
Was there skooma in the games you played?
I think so. I think there was. That's so funny.
Isn't it
There's
hilarious?
definitely a lot of fun little Easter eggs in all of the Elder Scrolls. It's interesting.
I love nerds.
Me too. Well, it's funny because nerds love us because this is random, but on the Descent episode that we did, a bunch of people commented on the short that I made about the crawlers, and they said that the crawlers from the Descent reminded them exactly of this race of beings from Elder Scrolls, the Falmir, which are corrupted snow elves that go blind over time. And it's just so nerds love us, they'll probably love your Elder Scroll reference.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can 100% picture the crawlers being blind snow elves or whatever you just said.
Yes, 100%. It fits way too closely. There's something was definitely inspired by something there.
I love it. So Thomas de Quincey also wrote a collection of essays called Suspiria de Profundis, and this was in 1845. Suspiria de Profundis means sighs from the depths or sighs from the deep. Now, this was an examination of how hallucinogenic drugs influence memory. That's what the topic of all these essays was. And there are several essays within it. One of them is called Lavana and Our Ladies of Sorrow. In this, De Quincey invents 3 companions to the Roman goddess of childbirth, whose name is Lavana.
Wait, this is so interesting. I had no idea that Suspiria meant sighs. I never even looked up the name of this movie, what it means. And with the sighing and the music and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
And Our Lady of Apnea, the directress herself. But yeah, he writes that just like the 3 fates, the 3 furies, and the 3 graces from mythology, there are also 3 sorrows. These are Our Lady of Tears, Our Lady of Sighs, and Our Lady of Darkness. The Latin title for Our Lady of Sighs is Mater Suspiriorum. So yeah, Lady of Sighs, sighs from the depths, Suspiria.
That's crazy. I'm super interested in this.
I did read this essay. It's not very long, and I will, of course, link it in our show notes. But he imagines meeting the Roman goddess Lavana, and then he starts talking about how he met 3 other sisters, and that just like there are 3 graces, 3 furies, 3 fates, there are also 3 sorrows. So it's just it seems like it's all part of the human experience to have some sort of sorrow.
Oh, okay. So he's speaking to this goddess when he comes up with, okay, that's super interesting. I do like that too, to add the 3 sorrows. I'm not as familiar with the 3 furies and the 3 graces, but I mean, everyone's got to know the 3 fates from Hercules, right? You can't ignore them trying to cut the thread of hair that turns golden.
Oh, yes.
Classic scene. But that's super interesting. I am absolutely going to read this essay as soon as possible.
Yeah. When De Quincey was describing the Lady of Sighs, he wrote that her eyes were filled with perishing dreams and the wrecks of forgotten delirium. She doesn't weep or groan, but she sighs forever. She's also the mother of hopelessness and desolation. Suspiria, the movie, was actually part of a trilogy by Dario Argento. So there are 2 other movies, one for each of the Ladies of Sorrow. One is called Inferno, and that's from 1980, and the other one is called Mother of Tears, that's from 2007. Neither of these 2 have like the notoriety of Suspiria, but he did finish his trilogy that was inspired in part by the De Quincey essay. Now, like De Quincey, Argento was known to take drugs, which probably surprises no one who has ever seen this movie. In another interview that he did, he said that the structure of Suspiria was inspired after an acid trip. And like, sure, man, I see it.
That's nuts. It's funny because I will never do acid. I just know who I am and my core, and I know that any trip I have will be a bad one. So I'll never do anything like that. But maybe that's why I love this movie so much, because I'm experiencing something that I'll never get to organically experience in real life.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know. Acid is terrifying because there are people who never really come down from it or something. I don't know.
Psychedelics in general, definitely stay away from all of that.
Yeah, there is some really cool stuff that they're doing with them now to help in a therapeutic way. It's helping a lot of people, but you're doing this under very tight controls, which is probably smart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's something to it, but yeah, definitely leave that to the professionals and not judging. Just not I just wouldn't end well for me personally. I know who I am.
Yeah. Although you did say you would drink that shroom milk with Jerry from Hokum.
It's true. But like I said, there's very few people I would trust to do shrooms with. And I think Jerry would take care of me.
Yes. But with Suspiria, wild acid trips weren't the only things coloring this movie. So let's talk Technicolor. Suspiria was filmed using a technology called Technicolor, specifically 3-strip Technicolor. Basically, instead of filming on 1 strip of film, 3-strip Technicolor would split the image using a prism, and it would record that image on 3 different strips of black and white film through color filters. These 3 films were then printed onto a special type of film and then processed in a lab through a special color technique, which combined all 3 films back into one. So it basically built the color back up in this really rich, more rich and more saturated way. Now, you've taken photography courses. Did you learn much about Technicolor?
I did not. The photography course I took, it was actually in a high school, so it wasn't like very well funded. We only had the capability to do black and white film. The only time we experimented with color, we had to hand paint the photos after we developed them.
Oh, that's wild. Hand painting?
Well, yeah, there's like a special kind of paint. So like you develop the photo black and white, and then you literally take like a special kind of paint, and it's kind of like coloring in the lines. Like you just color book the photos after, but it's a special paint. So it all blends. It looks really cool. I bet a lot of the old timey photos you see that are quote unquote color, someone hand painted them.
Oh, that's cool.
But I have no idea about this process, but it sounds so cool. And it absolutely worked. It's gorgeous.
It is. It's very pretty. Now, remember how I said Dario Argento was inspired by fairy tales? Well, it wasn't just the dark stories for children. It was also the colorful film adaptations. Other films that used 3-strip Technicolor included the original animated Disney films Snow White from 1937, Pinocchio from 1949, and Alice in Wonderland from 1951. Now, do you notice anything about the dates of these 3-strip Technicolor films?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, they're all before Suspiria. Like, they're all a little older than Suspiria.
They're much older than Suspiria. That's exactly right. And they were already old by the time Suspiria was being filmed. So as you might expect, the industry had already found much faster and cheaper ways to film in color. Now, the new methods were not as vibrant as Technicolor, and the director really wanted that Technicolor feel. But by the time he was ready to film Suspiria, there was basically only one lab in the entire world that still had the machines to do this, because the entire industry had moved on. And that last machine was located in Rome. He says that he and his crew had to basically beg the company to keep it operational long enough for him to film this movie. He also says they didn't have much of the physical film that they needed to shoot the whole movie, so they could only do really a couple of takes of each shot, so they had very little room for error.
Wow, that's nuts. That's interesting. I'm glad he found them before they shut down forever. I'm sure that took a lot of money And then if you're limited on film, you're probably stressed out the whole time. That would make me so anxious.
Yeah, for sure. So that meant that they had to get the visuals and the cast and everything just right for every single shot in order to conserve their very limited film. But one thing they did not have to worry about was the sound on set, which was good because basically no one spoke the same language. The plan from the beginning, and this was common at the time, was to dub everything after filming. So everyone was just doing their lines in their own language. So one actor could be saying their line in English and their co-star is replying in Italian, and then someone else says something in German.
Wait, was this dubbed? Is this movie dubbed?
Yes.
Oh my God. How did I not notice this? Maybe I did. I feel like there's times where I was like, especially with Pat, because I zoom in on her mouth and I'm like, whatever she's saying is not secret or Iris.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, wow. That would be so chaotic and really hard to communicate and wild. That's interesting.
I'm glad you said that because this might sound chaotic and intense, but we haven't even started talking about the music. Now, the soundtrack for Suspiria was written by the band Goblin. The band said, and this is even years later, that they still considered this soundtrack to be their masterpiece. Dario Argento and Goblin had worked together in the past, and for this movie, Dario gave the band a traditional Greek stringed instrument called a bouzouki, which is basically a long-necked lute. And he did this because in the story, you remember where Helena Markos is from?
Yes, she's from Greece.
Exactly. So they incorporated that into their soundtrack. And then another interesting thing, they did some very neat stuff to get some of the weird sounds you hear. Stuff like pinging glasses full of water with hammers.
I see that because, I think I described the music as very, chimey. It almost sounds like bells, but not quite bells. And, I mean, I agree the soundtrack is a masterpiece. So, good job, Goblin. But that's crazy. That's super cool.
It is cool. And the way they recorded this album is really cool too. Since Goblin had worked with the director before and they knew his approach and his style and his aesthetic, they used the script for Suspiria to make a draft album. So the early version of the soundtrack was made before filming even started. And then they took that version and blared it over loudspeakers at the cast and crew during production. Can you imagine this?
No, I simply could not work in this environment. I mean, I like the music, but as someone who is often overstimulated, the idea of no one's speaking the same language as me, the colors are insane, and there's this loud, intense music playing, no, thank you. This sounds like hell.
Yeah, and Dario is kind of a weird guy, and there's a special effects guy running around who's in a body cast, and then you learn you're supposed to be playing a child, sort of. It's all just crazy.
I was just going to say that. Imagine this environment full of little children.
It simply would not have worked.
No, they would just be running amok. It would be insane.
Yeah, so this had to be completely unhinged. Once the film was finished, Goblin went back to the recording studio and they made changes based on what they thought would fit the film better. And that was the final version of the soundtrack. And something to remember too, this was before music videos were really a thing. So musicians simply were not doing this. So this was quite unique and you could call it groundbreaking even.
I could see that, especially because now that I know that Suspiria means sigh, and they had all that sighing and the wheezing and the witch and the pinging, it's all so perfect. And it really does fit fantastically. And I think it's part of the reason. There's two things about this movie where I was like, this movie is going to become my full personality. It was one, the color, and two, the music that I think really did it for me. So I love that. That's super cool. They did a good job.
Yeah, this is a fascinating movie for all of those reasons. The look, the sound, how it was made, what inspired it, and what they were going for. So this, Charlie, is what I unearthed for us in the frightening, frenzied fever dream of a fairy tale that is Suspiria.
I love it. So what do you think then? What did we dig up today? Is it horror? Is it tragedy? Is it just a fairy tale? What do you think this movie is?
I think it's a horror fairy tale.
I agree. Our second horror fairy tale. Our first being Mother of Flies, right?
Yes. Well, I said Mother of Flies was a pure fairy tale.
That's fair.
Yeah. So this one feels like a horror fairy tale.
Yeah, I agree. A more gory, although again, it's just straight up grim fairy tale vibes. It's so fairy tale. I love everything about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't think of fairy tales as having a soundtrack, and now I won't be able to not think of it.
It's true. Yeah, and now that you've said, like, it's so Snow White and it's so Alice in Wonderland. Like, even the wallpapers they chose, the drawings in the room, in Madame Blanc's room, it's very, like, the colors that they used, it's just so gorgeous. This would be my movie. This is my movie that I would fall asleep to in the same way that Postmortem is the movie that you fall asleep to. Well, I'm going to add this one to the list for me to fall asleep to because I just find it so relaxing and comforting. And there it is. It is a fairy tale for me. I love it.
And you had seen the 2018 Suspiria, right?
I did. And it's funny because I watched it a couple years ago now, and I'm sure it's a good movie. Like, I know it's a good movie, but I just wasn't giving it the full attention it deserved. And it didn't, like, stick out in my brain like this movie did. So I'm excited to one day go back and rewatch it because I watched this Suspiria and I was like, I don't know what I watched a couple years ago, but it was not this.
Yeah, I love the 2018 one. I thought it was beautiful.
A lot of people do. A lot of people really do love it. I'm excited to rewatch it at some point. Though nobody hold their breaths, it'll probably be a minute. But I am excited to get to it.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, for the episodes that we do, if it's a remake, well, we have to do the original first. So it's going to take us a while to get to remakes or second installations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we always try to do like the first in a series too. So like we'll never just do Final Destination Bloodlines. We have to do the 10 before it first.
And before we put the shovels down for today, what are we going to dig into next week?
Next week is another patron vote episode. And as a reminder, if you'd like to be able to vote on upcoming episodes, come support us on patreon.com/horror sandbox. For $5 a month, it gives you early access to all of our episodes and ad-free episodes and other bonus content. And for next week, the patrons chose the body horror movie Together from 2025.
I am going to admit I am actually a little bit scared to do this one. Body horror is just that thing that kind of gets to me. So, patrons, thank you so much for the future trauma. Can't wait to share it with you.
It's a good one. You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Okay. I'm going in open-minded, so we'll see.
But okay, I think that does it for us today. So, listeners, may the horrors persist.
And beware of spooky European dance and piano academies. Which? Thanks for listening to Horror Sandbox. No generative AI was used in the making of this podcast. For show notes, credits, and contact info, check out our website, horrorsandbox.com. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Horror Sandbox. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Horror Sandbox. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with all the horror fans in your life.